I've got a background in wildlife conservation, but I've been growing food all of my life on community gardens, in my own back garden, and professionally. I love community gardening, and so my role in supporting groups to deliver growing projects, food growing projects, is perfect. There's a few things that I've sort of started to do. I've been in post for a month, and so I'm just going to take you through how I've been approaching my new job, my new role. The first thing I've done, I had a lovely slide for you showing the process of thinking about a community garden right through to implementing it. So I've been thinking about every single stage, from that idea or getting ideas about what you want to do, right through the practicalities of running and making sure that you have enough income to keep your project self-sustaining. The second thing I do is I've been looking at the support that groups need to take them through that process. So, for instance, a classic thing with a group starting up is identifying a piece of ground that they want to grow on, but trying to then get hold of that ground, and all of the steps included, from identifying who the landowner is, finding out about the suitability of that ground, whether it's contaminated, if there are flooding issues, and then negotiating a lease. So I'm trying to find all the people within Lanarkshire who can help support those sorts of activities for groups. The third thing I'm hoping to do is to celebrate all of the good activity that's happening already. And there's lots of activity already. Lots of people are growing. The pandemic has seen an increase, I think, in community growing out throughout the whole of the UK. And the fourth and probably most important thing that I'm doing is I'm going out and I'm speaking to groups about what they're doing, what they want to be able to do, where they need help in doing that, and then finally where they're at with climate change and the biodiversity crisis, what they know, what they don't know, what they'd like to know, and then my feeling about community growing is actually it is good for the climate. It is good for the climate. You're stopping the flow of water, you're increasing biodiversity, you're looking after the soil, but we can perhaps supercharge that, and that's where I see my role in supporting groups to do just that little bit more for the climate and for biodiversity. And on my lovely list, which I hope I'll show you later, one of the key things is to follow organic principles, and they encapsulate a whole lot of activities that make your garden, your growing space, more climate friendly. So the one that everybody knows is about not using chemicals on the ground, but one of the key principles is about supporting and developing your soil, your growing media. Another key principle is about reducing, reusing and recycling, so reducing the amount of plastics in the environment, but also thinking about not buying new where possible. The other really important
Sarah,
thing...
sorry to interrupt you. I got your presentation. It's working
okay.
now. Should I put it up now?
Yeah, go on.
Yes. And do you tell me which slide you're on?
Well, I tell you what, why don't you go to number 3?
Okay.
and then it'll give people a little bit of context.
Okay. Thank you.
You can see if I've been talking about the right things. I mean, that's a check you can do. So.
Okay, here we are. Let me just present. Okay, can everyone see it?
Oh, so
okay, here we are.
Scroll on. Okay, this was just the bit where I was talking about thinking about the whole process of planning to setting up to running a growing project. So if you scroll on to the next one. these are the things that I think that growing spaces already generally do for climate and biodiversity. And then if you go on to the next slide. And then these are the added extras, if you like, that I think that that gardens can do to boost their climate friendliness. And then if you move on to the next one, I guess I was talking about the key things I think are, one, to follow organic principles. It's bigger than gardening organically, I think, but and then the second thing is I think it's really important to tell people about what you're doing and why. It's talking about climate change is a tricky subject because it can make people fearful. It can freeze them, if you like. But I think that there are easy ways to just introduce the sorts of things we're doing. This was a display that we did in a community garden I worked in around COP. And we just said a little bit about climate change and then just put little notices around garden about what we were doing. And if you could move on to the next one. And so I just wanted to touch base on actually where and what I hope the project will do. And I hope that these are our results, if you like, that there are more people in Lanarkshire who are consciously growing in a climate friendly and biodiversity friendly way. I'm hoping that we have those people networked and able to share all the skills and existing knowledge that there is in the area, as well as fast track resources that become available. And finally, we can do a lot. We can do a lot to make ourselves feel good and in our actions for climate and biodiversity. But actually, it's governments that and other local authorities that need to influence some of the big influence of climate, like business, like industry, like agriculture. So we can lobby, I hope, and push for governments to take that action. And the last slide is just our contact details.
Hi there, I'm Pippa. I work for an organisation called Edible Estates. We're a community green space organisation based in Edinburgh. And today I'm going to speak a little bit about this project called Growing Together. Thank you for inviting me along today. Apologies I can't be there, so just bear with me as I've not recorded like this over a presentation before. So Growing Together is a project that started in 2022 and it's based across all council housing areas in Edinburgh. The aim is to develop and support community growing across the city, and you're likely, if you're on this call, to be well versed in the benefits of community growing for mental health and physical health, as well as individual and community resilience. And I'll speak a bit later on a little bit about how this project is bringing people together in a way that can catalyse wider community organisation and action within these communities. So who's funding the project and how is it initiated? So the City of Edinburgh Council tenants fed back that they would like more community gardening and growing opportunities when they were doing their feedback to the housing department. And from that, the council developed a community gardening framework, and part of the housing budget was set aside to deliver this. Edible Estates applied and got onto this framework, and so we're now funded to support existing community gardens and create new ones across the housing land in Edinburgh. It's allowed us to hire a project manager who leads on the new garden builds, and also myself, I'm a garden development officer and I work with communities to get the most out of the project. We also leveraged match funding from the UK Share Prosperity to cover the capital costs of the project, so that's things like building new gardens and materials and repairs on existing gardens. So how is it delivered? The project encompasses a broad range of activities depending on the requirements of each of the communities we're working with. There were many existing gardens, I'll go on to talk about them a little bit afterwards, which were set up by the third sector communities or the council, and some of them were in need of support and repairs for their existing gardens to improve their facilities, whereas other groups maybe wanted support with group development, things like setting up bank accounts and how to organise and manage the garden to make it a safe and enjoyable space for all the participants. I'll go on to the next slide, which kind of outlines how we gathered the information to begin with on all these existing gardens and identified opportunities for new ones. So we did a survey in 2022 to find out what community gardening was already happening on HRA land. That's all the land that surrounds existing council houses in Edinburgh. They're highlighted on the map with the different colours. And to understand like how they're managed and what condition they were in. There were 54 gardens in total. 12 of them were commissioned by the council, 2 were installed by new housing developers, and 32 were built by either the third sector or community organisations. Alongside discussing with the different groups what their requirements were, how they were managed, and what maybe they could get out of this project and this budget from the council. And we also identified areas where there was little or no provision across the city. So these are places such as Oxgangs and Dumpy Dykes, where we've since gone on to conduct some action research to see whether there's interest for growing and locations to do that within their communities. So that is kind of how we set out the work programme for the project. And the next slides will go on to look into a few of the details of the activities that we've been doing. So that picture in the top left-hand corner is the Sunshine and Leaf growers who had received some plug plants from the local council nursery, the Inch Nursery. We'd partnered with them to distribute over 5,000 plug plants last year to gardens across the city. And the impact of that is that new growers felt maybe a bit more confident in getting involved, as plug plants are a bit easier to tend. And it helped us develop relationships with the existing gardens across the city, help them out in different ways. We've built new facilities such as the compost bays here at Pilton Garden. So we've installed compost bays and rainwater harvesting at various different sites across the city. That suspicious looking picture there is a soil test which was conducted in one of our community gardening sessions. So one of our methods of supporting a garden is to hire a sessional community gardener to work alongside the group and help them develop their skills and knowledge. We tend to do this in like a 6-week grow your own programme, but we kind of tailor it depending on what the existing knowledge of the group is and what they'd like to learn. And also on the right there, that was a wee open day at Hamilton Wine Community Garden. They wanted to increase their participation there. So we hosted an open day where we planted some new fruit bushes, which we'd got funding through the Scott Mid Orchard project to purchase. So I'll go on to the next one. So these pictures here are all from Green Dykes, community back green. This garden was developed by the new housing developers, and over COVID, the council had locked out the participants after a dispute, and by the time we got there, the site was covered in weeds and there was no one really engaged in the site at all. So our approach was to bring together the existing interested residents and flyer the place to get some more to establish a group, and they worked together with the community gardener there to clear the site and allocate plots and get growing. So that picture on the right there was the garden in full bloom last year. It was a very productive year, and as you can see, the growers have now been sharing recipes and food amongst themselves, and they continue to do that this year as well. So just with like a little bit of investment, that group's kind of using the space and making the most out of it. we provided tools for different sites. One group has established an orchard on top of their existing market garden. We've installed wheelchair accessible areas for some of the groups, and worked together with Craig and Tinney Garden to install their rainwater harvesting. So lots of different approaches depending on what level of support the different gardens need. The 2 new gardens we've created this year and built alongside communities. This is Muirhouse Garden. They are, rather than building a new shed, they're redeveloping the existing abandoned garages into their community shed. And this has been done through one of our learning and wellbeing programmes called Lend a Hand, which supports over 50s who are out of employment to learn new skills, meet new people and take part in a community project. And that's well on the way to being finished. That particular garage is going to be have the addition of a mural soon. We've engaged the local youth group to do a mural project, and that will back onto the garden and be quite a prominent part of it. There's also weekly community gardening sessions at the Muirhouse Garden, and local people are taking on plots within that space. So it's well on the way to being quite established now. Same goes for Hutchison Community Garden. This project actually started in 2019 but was put on pause in COVID, and we kind of rebooted it with this new bit of funding. The group there have their assigned plots, and all the plots are filled and they're starting to grow in this season. You can see at the bottom picture there that we've engaged the local school group, and they come along for sessions and they have their own plot which they'll be tending throughout the summer as well. We've had an open day and we're planning a summer barbecue. They've got weekly community garden sessions there with Gabby, the community gardener, and we're supporting them to kind of establish their own group, so the community will run the garden once our involvement is no longer needed. So this was last year in numbers, just a few kind of insights in what we've been doing and what we plan to do going forward. I was asked a bit about our process and how we go about things in the email inviting me to the talk. So this is the process we kind of take when we're working with a new community to establish a community garden, and this might be useful if you're planning to do this yourself in your community. So this is with the Dunby Dykes group. We started working with them last June, and that involved talking to lots of local organisations and local people, flyering through doors and asking them to get in touch if they're interested in growing. We brought together those people. We created a green space plan to see what kind of actions they'd like in their area, whether that's kind of food growing, biodiversity, whether they can identify somewhere for a big community garden where people have their own plots. And we got working on that. So they also have community gardening sessions each week, and you can see at the bottom there, they've just established a fruit tree growing area and a wildflower meadow. I think it's been made easier because we've got the contract with the council to deliver this project, but it's taken a bit of work to kind of get the housing officers and the existing officers to understand like what our role is within this, and you know, be able to convert existing grassland into new projects. So from this group, they came along and they wanted to improve their green space, but they also got chatting about other things within their community. And we kind of signposted them to Edinburgh Tenants and Residents Federation to set up a Tenants and Residents Association. So just from talking and having kind of a positive focus, they've been able to tackle other issues within their community. They've had a big community clear-up recently, and they're trying to reactivate their local community room and community centre. So it just proves the power of kind of getting people to talk to one another, and gardening is kind of a good hook to do that. I'll go on to the next slide. Oh, before I do that, we've got lots of different resources, and can't say that they're completely new, but we're willing to kind of share them. So things like handbooks about volunteer management committees, and also lesson plans for grow your own courses and things like that, if that would be of any help. So yeah, I'll leave you with this little quote from one of the Oxgang's group members, and it was, I just think, a really nice way of putting why they approached the project and what a difference it's making. And here are my contact details. Please get in touch if you're interested, if you want any more information about anything. If you're in Edinburgh and want to get involved in a community garden, or you've got an idea, or if you're further afield and feel a bit inspired, or want some advice or information. Thank you.